I'm here today to talk about DataWedge. So I'm looking forward to delivering this presentation. Well, let's get started. We have enough folks on to start this presentation. All right, so my name is Rob Galvin. Thanks again for joining this month's DevTalk. Just as a reminder, a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. So DevTalks, we run them sometimes twice a month. So May, we're doing 2 sessions, really awesome sessions. Next one is coming up very shortly. It's May 2nd, and it's building Ionic apps for Zebra devices. So if you're not familiar with Ionic, it's a cross-platform solution for you to develop hybrid applications. We have somebody coming on from Ionic, so a developer evangelist from Ionic, who's kind of the ninja for Ionic. Really looking forward to this presentation myself. And we also have Darren Campbell, who's one of our ninjas on the Zebra side, participating in that discussion. So that one is definitely a can't miss DevTalk, especially if you're developing hybrid applications. Also useful if you're considering moving to hybrid applications, or you're looking for a solution that that you can use your web skills in delivering applications for Zebra products. The next one that we have coming after that is in May as well. It's May 16th, and it's for card printer software development tools. So if you're using one of our card printers, you'll definitely not want to miss that episode where we dive into the developer tools and how to print cards on our printers using Java SDK. So definitely don't miss that. And all of our developer events, if you do happen to miss them, can be found on our developer portal in this link above. So be sure to check out that page. You'll see some recordings from previous events that you may have missed. Definitely check them out. There's a lot of good stuff there. And speaking of don't miss another DevTalk, be sure you subscribe. We've made some changes to the developer portal recently. And, you know, sometimes things, you know, when things change, people have some issues with finding things. So just to make sure you guys understand how to subscribe to all the great information we're putting out there. Stacy is coordinating a lot of this, and we're producing a lot of really good content for you. So it's right on the homepage, right down below the news and events, little carousel there. There's a button there, sign up for news, and you'll see a simple form. It'll only take 2 seconds. If you're not on this list, definitely get on this list. We send out messages that not only talk about these dev talks, but also other things like dev buzz, dev newsletters, everything related to developing solutions on Zebra products. Definitely, you know, can't miss information you want to subscribe to. So check that out if you're not already on the list. If you are, thank you very much for participating, and we look forward to having you on in our community. So today the session is around DataWedge, okay? And we release DataWedge pretty much every 3 months. There's a new release. DataWedge goes into our products directly. We haven't talked about DataWedge, I think, since September of last year on our Dev Talks. So we have about 2 releases to cover here. So we had a release late in the year last year, and we're working on a new release that's coming out very, very soon that has some important features that you want to be aware of. And that's what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to go through the features, talk about them a little bit. If you have questions, please type them in as we're going through them. And then what I'll do is at the end, we'll just go through all the questions and answer them then. So this way, all the answers are kind of in the recording at the end of the session. This session is being recorded, so if you need to jump off at any point in time, I hate to see you go, but the recording will be there for you on our developer portal shortly after we finish up the session. So, all right, cool. Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about DataWedge. So first of all, we're going to talk about some things that are coming up in DataWedge or have been recently released. So just a really quick reminder, how to check your version on DataWedge. When you're using DataWedge, loading the application, there's a menu button, and all you have to do is click on the About. And right in there, we'll show the version. Okay, so this is showing version 6.7, which is one that was released late in 2017. So I'll be covering this version plus the next version, which is called 6.8. And we'll be talking about some of those features. Okay, so let's talk about one of those new features that are coming very soon. It belongs in the coming soon category that will be available in DataWedge 6.8. And it has to do with notifications using our intent API. So if you haven't really kept up with DataWedge, we've been spending a lot of time creating APIs for our developers to use. DataWedge has traditionally always been kind of a code-free way of getting data into your application, barcode, MSR, etc. But now we're seeing, kind of a strong need from the community to have even further controls in your application for getting this data without having to write a ton of code. So we've decided to really put a strong emphasis on our intents API for DataWedge. Okay, so you'll see a lot of reference to that today. This one is coming soon. It has to do with remote scanners. So these are cordless scanners. You'll see an image up there in the upper top left of a ring scanner. And we have a new one that we're supporting. And essentially what this does is it allows you to send what we call notifications to these scanners. And why would you want to do this? Well, these are cordless, right? So they're not typically attached to the device, and sometimes you can't find them, right? So people wear them, they put them down for a brief moment, and then they lose track of where they are. So you might as well send a beep, send a flash, and so we can find the device. That's one kind of use case. Another one is more for status. So when you're scanning product, scanning barcodes, you want to indicate to the user, if the barcode was successfully scanned or not. And we have LEDs and beeping as well. So this is a visual or an audible indication of a good or a bad scan. And this way they don't even have to look at the screen, okay? So we have different APIs for you to control the LED color, beeping and flashing different patterns. So you can use this in different ways, again, to kind of indicate successful or unsuccessful barcode scans and have your users trained to kind of react to those differently, scan again or move on to the next product, etc. So we've had this in there, and in this coming up version, we're now adding a few new features to that. One of them is to support a new scanner, a DS3678. So that's that bigger one in the bottom left here. Okay, and you can see that the colors on the scanner here, red and green, kind of like a bad scan, a good scan. This one is a ring scanner here with an LED color. So we're now supporting this product. When you're using this intent API, this particular scanner has a different way to trigger these notifications. This is more of a predefined notification pattern where the ring scanners have you can pretty much do anything you want with those. But this particular product is kind of like a predefined list, so it's a slightly different way of using the API for these two different types of scanners, and we have this all documented for you guys. The other thing that we added for the notification API is to cancel the notification. So let's say you can't find the scanner, it's beeping away, annoying everybody. You might as well want to cancel that if you found it, right? So we have an API now where you can actually cancel sending the notification instantly, okay? So just a little thing that may be helpful if you're using these products and also this API. All right, so let's talk about another feature that has been added to our intent APIs. And this one's really cool because, number one, it gives a lot of power to those who are using this feature in DataWedge, but it also, in fact, kind of completes the intent API set that we have for DataWedge. So we've been kind of slowly moving all of our capabilities into our intent API, and this one kind of rounds out where you can now pretty much do everything you need to do with DataWedge using our intent APIs. So this has to do with ADF rules, so advanced data formatting, okay? We have a lot of customers that set up DataWedge profiles. A lot of people are just using the basic, keystroke output. But those who are really using this to its ultimate potential is using advanced data formatting rules. Okay, so this is where you're scanning barcodes and you want to start doing different things with the barcode before it gets to your application. Okay, so as the barcode is being processed, you could chop it up in different ways. You can pad it with information. You can add characters. And why would you want to do this? Well, this is all depending on how your application is handled to set this up, and also what sort of barcodes you're using for different reasons. So you would set up these ADF rules, and they can get pretty complicated, I must say. You can do a lot of things with it without having to touch any code, which is really where the power comes from. But you couldn't control this via intents. You could only set up new configurations, set up new profiles, and you couldn't set up the ADF rules. So this was like the missing link of what you needed to do to kind of complete out our intent API set. So this is coming soon. This isn't available now, but this will be coming very, very soon to a device near you. Okay, so let's talk about another new feature, global parameter support. What the heck is this? Okay, so let me first set this up by talking a little bit about the issue or the scenario that came to us for us to develop this feature inside of DataWedge. Okay, so a lot of our customers, our bigger customers, are using DataWedge, have many different profiles, are supporting many different devices and scanner types. Okay, now currently when you're configuring, let's say, the cordless scanner types, they typically have to be actually physically connected and paired to the device in order for you to access those configuration parameters. So that kind of presented problem number one, where you actually needed to connect and disconnect and kind of set all this up. And if you needed to do this once and kind of deploy this configuration out to many devices, it got to be a little challenging. The other thing that happened was, let's say you had the scanner selection set to auto, where it would automatically select the scanner that is being used. If you decided to do this and you configured a parameter that possibly was not supported on, let's say, one of those Ring Bluetooth scanners, then you would have a situation where the parameter may not be applied properly, and you would just get non-expected behavior, right? So we wanted to provide a way to simplify this whole thing, where you can essentially create what we're calling a global parameter set for all different types of scanners, and the ones that are common across the scanner types would be applied, and the ones that were specific to a particular scanner type would be applied at the right time. Okay, so this is essentially what we've done in DataWedge, is to now in your profiles have a way, and it's not shown on the screen right now. I didn't have a screenshot that had this, but it is coming very, very soon. And this will allow you to kind of set things once and know and have confidence that the parameters would be configured properly no matter what scanner was being used when DataWedge was active. Okay, so again, if you're kind of using this in a scenario where you're supporting multiple scanner types, this could be important to you, and it just makes things a lot easier in terms of configuration, management, deploying it out en masse to a lot of devices. And like I said before, one of the good things on this is that for the cordless scanners, you can now do this where it actually doesn't have to be connected. So you can configure all of this without having to physically connect the Bluetooth scanners to your device. So that's kind of cool. All right, so here's just a really quick note on some new scanners, cordless scanners that we're going to support in the near future. These are one of our top of the line rugged, I think they're 1D scanners. They won some industrial design awards, which are really cool. If you're into design, you wouldn't believe it or not, a lot goes into the design of these scanners, and winning these awards are quite rewarding ourselves to kind of know that all of this hard work is being recognized. All right, so let's talk about another feature in DataWedge that has been recently released. This came out in the 6.7 version, I believe. It has to do with multi-barcode, okay? Now, I must say, I want to caveat this, it is only available on the TC20 and TC25, but it is potentially useful if you're using those devices. So first of all, what is it? It essentially allows you to scan in multiple barcodes all at once, right? So let's say, if you have a case where you're processing maybe packages that are coming in, you just scan different barcodes. If you didn't have this feature, you'd have to scan, and it takes a lot of time, right? And they could misscan and have to decode, so there's a lot of room for error. So now in one shot, one click of the scan button, you can scan in all of those barcodes all in one scan, okay, which greatly reduces the amount of time it takes and also reduces the chance for error. Okay, so this is found in the reader parameters, and essentially it's really simple. You're basically saying, like, okay, this reader parameter is multi-barcode, turn on multi-barcode, and then you would then have an option to select the number of barcodes that would be scanned. So in this case, in this example, we show 5 barcodes, even though there's only 4 on this image, but you get the idea, right? So you turn on multi-barcode and then you set the number of barcodes that you want to scan in all in one shot, okay? Couple of usage notes if you plan on using this. So let's say, you know, there's a couple things where data won't actually be returned and it will be ignored, right? So if you say, like in this case, the barcode has 4 barcodes shown. So if I selected, you know, if I had 5, right? If I said I want to scan 5 and only 4 are shown, then it's going to be ignored, right? It didn't get 5, okay? So if you set 5, it needs to have 5. If there's more than 5, let's say I had my number as, you know, 5, and there's 4 on here, it's only going to, I'm sorry, the other way around, right? If it sees more than what you have it set to, it's only going to give you the first barcodes that it sees, okay? And in this case, there's duplicate barcodes on this particular label. It's going to ignore the duplicates. So in this case, there's only 3. So this would only work, this particular label would only work if I had the number 3 configured, okay? How is the data sent to your device? Well, the data is sent, depending on if you're using keystroke or intent output, all of the data is packaged up essentially in one long string, right? A single string that will have all the barcode data concatenated together, okay? Now, it does support multiple barcode types. So in this label, I have all the same type, but if you had different types of barcodes, it would read all of the different types of barcodes all in one shot. Now, okay, so now you're probably thinking like, okay, if I have all this data all at once, how am I going to be able to handle this in my application? Well, all you need to do is essentially set up in the keystroke output a separator, okay? So what you would do is you would say, okay, go into the keystroke output data formatting, and then you would go down to the multi-barcode specific area and you'd select the separator. So this barcode here would be sent, and then it would add a tab, and then the next one would be sent. The tab would basically be inserted in between those strings. So your application, maybe your form was set up in such a way where it would go to the next field. Maybe that's what you want to do, and all the barcodes would be put into the proper fields, or if you're handling it a different way, you know, you would be able to take care of it that way, okay? Now, if you're using intents as an intent output, so you don't have to use keystrokes, you can trigger an intent with the data once the data is read. This is handled in a bundle, and it's delineated with a special field that says, this is the decode mode. It was a multiple decode, so this way your application can now know what to do with that data, if it needs to chop it up, or if it's a single decode and it's just one single barcode. Okay, so that's how you would use it using intents. Here's a hairy piece of code that we don't need to go through in great detail, but essentially this is an example of setting up an intent to trigger this behavior, to configure it for multi-barcode. So it's a scanning mode, a value of 3 that we key in there to indicate that this profile should be set up for handling multi-barcode. And in this particular example, we're turning off keystroke output and we're turning on intent output instead. Okay, so this is just a really quick example that we have in our sample code for DataWedge. So let's see. So the next feature that I want to talk about has to do with inter-character delay. And I'm just doing a quick check if anybody has any questions while they're coming up. Okay, cool. So inter-character delay, this is used when, basically what we saw was some applications, particularly terminal emulation applications, some of them had issues with kind of keeping up with how fast the data was coming in, right? Long barcodes, what have you. We're just, sending keystrokes, right? And sometimes the application would just not behave properly. We miss some characters or what have you. And so we needed to introduce a way for people to get around that, because if their application, for whatever reason, is unable to respond at the speed that it needs to, we still wanted the ability to have the barcode be able to put it into that application without issues. So this was a way that we came up with. And it essentially introduces a delay in milliseconds after each character. So this will ensure, hopefully, that all the data gets to your app. Now you do have to do some testing with this. There are some downsides depending on how much you increase this delay. It could negatively impact application performance. So again, this is used with caution. What we have added in this recent release or coming soon is the ability to only trigger this for extended ASCII characters. So for those of you who are in other regions, if you have double byte characters and you want to turn this on just for those, you now have the capability to do that. Okay. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, so another new feature we introduced was a new aiming type. Okay, so we do have a few existing aiming types in terms of when you're scanning the barcode. This one, again, caveat, is only available on the TC20, TC25. What it's called, press and sustain. It's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially what you're doing is you're hitting the scan trigger, and then the barcode will continue, the scanner will continue to decode, right? Try to decode until either the beam timer is expired or there's a barcode that actually was scanned, right? So you might think this is like, all right, it's pretty minor, but in some cases it's very useful. You basically, you hit the scan trigger on the device and the beam is just active until it scans. Like you want to ensure there's a barcode that gets scanned. You don't want to accidentally turn off the barcode, scanner. You don't want to actually scan things when you shouldn't, right? It just makes it useful for people who maybe they need to use two hands. They can't keep their finger on the trigger. Certain use cases, depending on how you're using the device, you may want to turn on this feature so that you can ensure a barcode gets scanned. Okay, and the beam is not turned off when you tap the trigger again, like you would normally. The normal behavior is you tap the scan trigger, and the beam is on while you're holding it, right? Or in some modes, it's on continuously, and then you tap it again and cancel. In this case, it's on pretty much continuously until a barcode scanned, and it won't turn off until the timer expires or a barcode is scanned. So, all right, so that's enough of that feature. Dynamic templates, okay? So this is something that is used only with Simulscan, okay? So Simulscan has a feature that allows you to enable what's called dynamic templates. So for those of you who are not familiar with Simulscan, it's a document capture service that we have that allows you to scan in a label and pick up different things on the label. So this is different than the multi-barcode feature that I talked about before. This is more about, let's say you have other things on the label. Maybe there's a signature you want to capture. Maybe there's some text that you want to do some OCR recognition, character recognition on. With Simulscan, you can kind of set up these templates and define these fields of data that you want to capture on your label. So in this kind of image here, you can kind of see somebody scanning in a label, and maybe they want to pick up an address, the signature that the package was picked up. Simulscan allows you to do that. Now, in the past, originally Simulscan would only allow you to kind of define like, okay, the label has 10 fields, like you must have these fields. Now we have the ability to have dynamic templates. So now you have flexibility in defining. Sometimes maybe those fields may not exist, but you still want to capture the rest of the data. Dynamic templates allows you to do this. Okay, so now that we have that in Simulscan, we need to also provide this inside of DataWedge. And essentially inside of DataWedge, you're essentially specifying the number of barcodes to be decoded on the form. Okay, so we now are supporting that feature. All right, let's talk about another API. This is about importing configurations. So there's a couple of different configurations for DataWedge. There are DataWedge itself configurations, so settings for DataWedge, and then there's actually profiles that you can export. So typically what somebody would do is they would create these profiles, these settings on like a golden device, configure all this stuff, and then export them into these files and then distribute them via their MDM so that DataWedge can be configured en masse across many different devices. Okay, so now you can still do that, but now what you can do, what's new, is that you can trigger importing these profiles programmatically through our intent API. So if you haven't gotten the gist, you can kind of see a trend here. We're trying to put everything into our intent APIs for controlling DataWedge programmatically. So this is just a simple intent to import profiles and configuration. You have a few different choices when you're doing this. And before I get to that, let me just talk about some of the usage notes. So first of all, when you're doing the import config, it's going to check the folder that's specified in the folder path attribute. And I'll show a piece of code in a second. And essentially what it does is it's checking a folder on your device, and it's going to look for two things. It's going to look for a configuration file, which is always called datawedge.db. This is the DataWedge settings file, okay? And if it's found, it's basically going to restart DataWedge, applying the settings immediately, erasing everything that was in DataWedge, basically resetting DataWedge at that point, okay, if this file is there. It's also going to look for the profile configuration files, and these are always called DW profile _ and whatever the profile name is, okay? So if the profile exists already on the device with the same name, then essentially it's just going to override it, right? It's going to modify it. And if that same profile is also currently active, it's basically going to apply those settings immediately, okay? So it's going to import and also apply immediately, okay? And also, by the way, while this intent is running, any sort of auto import functionality is disabled, okay? So auto import is another feature in DataWedge where it'll kind of look for these settings files and automatically import them. But if you trigger this via an intent, you have more control over what happens. So how do you do this? Well, here is not so hairy piece of code, but just a small piece of code. I'll just kind of walk through it really quick. So this one is essentially saying, here is the folder you should look at, SD card config folder, and it's going to say, okay, here are the files I want to import. The first one is that datawedge.db, which is the overall settings configuration. The next two are just simply profiles, profile A and profile B, that will be imported. And then it triggers the intent and says to send the results over to this broadcast receiver. And this broadcast receiver is just set up to basically handle the result and decide if that went through or not. And then your application can do whatever you want with it. So that's how you import the configurations using our intent APIs. And I want to say that is almost like the end of yeah, so it is almost the end. Okay, so cool. So we've kind of reached the end of all of the new and great features for DataWedge. I know that was super quick, but definitely there's a lot more you can check out on techdocs.zebra.com. We have all of our DataWedge documentation up there. There'll be the new version coming soon, available on TechDocs 6.8. You'll find code examples like I showed you before. There's also some sample applications that are available. Some applications are on the device like DW Demo, but we have some other ones that are provided by some Zebra employees like Darren Campbell, the DataWedge Ninja. He has a intent example that we linked in TechDocs we can download right off of GitHub. And then we also provide a lot of reference that covers all of the settings that I talked about before. DataWedge has some information in there, but these guides on TechDocs goes a lot deeper in terms of what these settings mean and when you should use them, a lot of special notes. And I think Eddie Correa may be on as well. He's responsible on our team for developing those. So that's pretty much all I had for this presentation. I want to jump over to any questions that we may have. I'm not sure if I'm seeing these, Stacy. Are you still there?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in, Rob. Right now we don't have any questions, so if anyone has any dying questions that they would like to ask, now's the time. Feel free to put those in our chat room and we'll go ahead and post those.
Yeah, and if you don't have any questions and you also have potential feedback, love to always hear feedback. You know, this product, this DataWedge product, has been around for a long time. I was trying to figure out, I've been with the company for 13 years, and I was trying to figure out some really fun facts about DataWedge, and I couldn't find any. So, but it's been around for a long time. So there's definitely interested in any feedback you may have, any features that you find might be useful to have. Different things that may make it more clear in terms of documentation. Always interested in hearing your feedback to make it easier for you to use our tools and solutions. Always let us know. And we also monitor the forums on the developer portal as well, in case you have any questions there. So I guess we'll give it another minute or so for any questions while I'm kind of blabbing on here. Stacey, I still don't know.
We don't have anything.
I guess I see them, but there are none that exist. So. All right, well,
so I think we can wrap it up.
All right, so one comment came in. If a device has an older version of DataWedge, how can it be upgraded to get access to new features? Yeah, so DataWedge is not directly downloadable. It's part of our operating system updates, our device updates. So as I'm talking about these new features, you may not have availability yet to them until you update your device. So that was a good question. All right. Any other questions? Anything else you want to bring up, Stacey, community-wise?
I just want to remind everybody to make sure that they sign up for our news. We do have a new DevBuzz newsletter that we're sending out where you can get all the tech information, reminders on the DevTalks, information about our podcasts as well. So please be sure to sign up for those when you have an opportunity, and we'd love to communicate with you further.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, I think that's a wrap. I don't see anything else coming in, and yeah, just the slide deck will be posted, all right, Stacey, on the developer portal.
Yes, the slide deck will be available for viewing, and then we'll also have this actual presentation on our YouTube channel, and we'll post that as soon as we have that as well on our developer portal.
All right, cool deal. Thanks a lot for everybody for coming on today. I know taking your time on a busy day to join live is valuable. We do appreciate your time and effort, and look forward to seeing you in the developer community.
Thanks, Rob, for a great presentation. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.